Yeah, just very quickly. And it's worth actually thinking about geographically what we're talking about. Here are just some statistics. At this moment, there are 40,000 container ships afloat on the oceans of the planet. That carries an immense percentage of world trade. Not only our trade, but the trade of other industrialized nations, other developing nations. This is a classic global common good. But it's also an element of American power that's a bedrock element. Of those 40,000 ships, probably 2/3 of them are someplace between the Persian Gulf and Northeast Asia, on that superhighway, ocean superhighway that runs through the Indian Ocean, through the Straits of Malacca and the other straits and choke points in and around Singapore, to Korea, to Japan, to Taiwan, to China. This has been the security framework for China's economic modernization. It's lifted 200 million people out of poverty. Everything that China has bought, almost without exception, in the past 15 years, is a threat to the security of that superhighway. Ballistic missiles, submarines, you can't protect yourself against pirates with anti-ship ballistic missiles or submarines. And it's a threat to the U.S. Navy. So this is, I think, going to be really the central point of contention for years to come. It's where also the industrialized East Asia reaches into the Middle East and to the Persian Gulf. So the value of American naval security on those sea lines of communication can't be undervalued. And what is true of the seas is true of the skies, it's true of space, and it's true of the internet as well, over which an increasing proportion of modern commerce and finance flows. If the internet is not secure, what are the geopolitical consequences of that? So, yes, yes, yes.
Can I make just one quick other point? When we talk about China, we sometimes are told that this is, histrionic, and we're building them into an enemy, or we're making them an enemy. That their investment in national security is a fraction of ours. That in fact, ours is larger than all of the other countries of the world, or some significant subset of them combined. I commend to you just a very basic, again, common sense thought. If you compare the investment that criminals, not to say terrorists, just criminals make, relative to the investment that a society, a community, a town makes to protect against it, invariably, the criminal spends a lot less than the police do. It's axiomatic. And what's worrying is, as Tom has very well said, the Chinese are using an investment, which is growing, by the way, and they're never transparent about how large it really is. But let's just say, for the purpose of discussion, it is a fraction of ours, and it is, but growing. They are investing it with extraordinary, thorough foresight and strategic acumen to think about how to do just the sorts of things Tom's talking about, and not just the naval choke points, but in space, cyber warfare, and the rest. And that's what makes this boundary condition, if you will, I think bigger than just Al-Qaeda, for example, which we are endlessly told is the only threat we have to face, or at least the only one we're at war with. We should be so lucky that that's all we're up against. Not to say that that's a good thing, but it's only a part of the problem, particularly going forward. John?
Thanks, Frank. I'm John Quapis. I'm a former National Field Director for the old Coalition for Peace Through Strength American Security Council back in the 80s that fought a lot of these battles back then. From what you've said, we have 6 to 8 weeks to deal and successfully deal and fight a battle on this defense issue. And my reading is that there's a strong probability we're going to end up somewhere close to that 50% amount coming out of defense at this point. What we need to do now is what we've got to focus on. I'm wondering, has this survey that was done by McLaughlin gone to all the Republican candidates, gone to every member of that super committee, gone to Fox News and others? Has the House Armed Services Committee and others recently had, or are they planning any hearings on the growing threat of a hollowed out military and the growing threats to the U.S. and world security? Those could be should be, if they haven't been done recently, should be within the next 4 weeks. Those kind of hearings need to go on. We also need to highlight what the effects of these cuts, if they go through at the levels that we're fearing, what they are going to do in terms of our future force readiness and capabilities, how they're going to degrade them, and combine that with a showing of the future threat probabilities we're facing. We've got, like you say, 6 to 8 weeks to do this. I think one thing that will be imperative is to get a meeting next week of the principals involved here to develop a strategy relating to lobbying Congress and media strategy and what have you. One thing for the longer run that the American Security Council did very effectively was to put out a film, several films on different issues, about a half-hour long, that were shown in rotaries, chambers of Congress, churches, wherever. That's something for the longer run that needs to be done on an overall security issue.
John, I don't want to cut you off. John Quapis has just given us a smorgasbord of good things to do in the next 6 to 8 weeks, as he points out, which is what we have to change the direction of the Titanic. I won't try to characterize all of the things except to say that we do, in fact, under the rubric of the Coalition for the Common Defense, meet with regularity for those kinds of conversations. We'd welcome your participation and for that matter, others who are interested in participating. Let me turn it over to Tom to speak to, as you have been recently hanging with the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, what you're seeing going on among the community people on the Hill who are worrying about this as we are, and what do you think we can do to help them?
Well, it's the case that Mr. McKeon and the members of that committee are really the nucleus around which we should go. They've always had the right ideas, and they've been the first, seeing this crisis, to step forward and to try to make a difference. The Senate, their Senate counterparts have not done this. My personal view would be that I would just find it negligent to the point of criminality on the part of the super committee if they don't call Secretary Panetta and General Dempsey to testify before they pull that sequestration trigger. They know perfectly well what they'll be doing, but I think that would be a failure of moral courage to face that moment square in the face. But Frank is right. This is the first battle that's bound to be a long one. A lot of damage has already been done. This is simply to try to begin to turn the ocean liner in a different direction. It's going to take, let's hope this is an important issue in the upcoming presidential election.
Well, we have a possibility of making it. We have to try to make it an issue.
Let me just say that we heard from Ralph Reed earlier in the program. I think today or tomorrow, in the run-up to the debate down in Orlando, a group that he's been associated with, the Faith and Freedom Coalition, will have, I believe, every single Republican candidate appearing before them. I have reason to believe they will not get through that process without hearing from Ralph and his team about this. But again, as I said earlier, those folks who are seeking the presidency are not going to be the ones making this decision on pulling the trigger. And let's be honest, there's probably at least half of the people on that committee who will think the best outcome is sequestration. So we have to change the minds of at least one of them, those folks. And the only way I can think of to do it is to create enough of a sense that there will be hell to pay if that is done to our national security capabilities. It's not just the military. It's not just the people like General Nixon and the folks here at ROA that are going to be bearing this burden. It's us. So out of self-interest, I think we've got to be doing all of the things that, John, you mentioned, and hopefully we'll get those up on the website shortly, and of course that Tom just mentioned.